So intuitive intelligence, I mean, it sounds rather mystical and kind of magical, and that's probably one of the things that's wrong with the terminology. Intuitive intelligence basically means the ability to be able to understand and interpret context in order to consistently and reliably make good decisions. And some people have that ability to be able to sense the whole, focus and make a decision which they have absolute certainty about. Intuition basically is too often regarded as hunches or as kind of, I feel something is right. And whereas that's valid and it does exist, that's really not what we're talking about when we're talking about intuitive intelligence. Let me give you a few examples about what I do mean. A first responder, an ambulance driver, arrives at a crash scene, bodies all over the place, 4 or 5 bodies there. One person zeroes in on that, notices the colour of the blood, the angle of the body, the rate of breathing, the dilation of the eyes, makes spontaneous choices about taking this person right now, leaves the others there into the ambulance straight away to hospital. How did he come to those conclusions? It basically broke standard operating procedures of all different kinds, defied all of their training, left other people there. How did that person come to that conclusion about that choice at that moment? He took in a whole variety of data, which in his intelligent memory over years, he was trained to do. He noticed the colour of that blood means that you've hit a main artery, etc., etc. If this person does not get to emergency care within the next 20 minutes, he will be dead. The others observing symptoms can be dealt with a longer period of time. The ability that he had and the confidence that he had in that choice and decision is symptom of a highly developed intuitive intelligence. A military man, a platoon in the jungle, in a military conflict. Soldier hears a sound 50 metres off to the right. What is that sound? Is it a member of the patrol? Is it a comrade? Is it the enemy? Is it an animal? And in that spontaneous moment, that person has to make a choice. Point the gun and pull the trigger or not. And how consistently do you make choices with that degree of absolute confidence and certainty and decisiveness? That is what I mean by a high level of intuitive intelligence. Bringing it back closer to the subject of leadership, the ability for a leader to be able to sense the whole, to be able to see the big picture. As Einstein said, get off the dance floor, stand on the balcony and see what's really going on. And the ability to take in vast amounts of data from customers, from employees, from the market, etc., and say, this exactly is the decisive point where we need to focus. Focus upon the few things that make the biggest difference. The manager who is able to listen to a situation that's occurred amongst colleagues on the team, listening to all different things, is able to summarize that and get a sense of what really is actually happening, make a choice, make a decision. Great leaders make good choices consistently, and where frankly any business will end up, any career will end up, will largely be attributed to the choices that you make. And what raises the odds of you making more consistently good choices and decisions in your business, in your life, is your ability to understand context. And that is the art of intuitive intelligence. Well, the context in which businesses are in today and that most business leaders find themselves is very challenging. The acceleration of changes in the market, in a highly dynamic market, the ability to be able to make good choices fast enough and implement them with fierce resolve is becoming a critical success factor. You can make good decisions if you've got the time to be able to analyze and define and synchronize and reality test, etc. Frankly, and then you've got the challenge of how do you execute that quickly. Well, the ability to be able to choose and implement very quickly is what is going to determine whether you're in business or not. So those are the contexts in which highly intuitive leaders are being developed. And you look at this as a bit of a progression in time. Once upon a time, a person was appointed to a position of leadership because they were incredibly smart. Warren Buffett talks about 3 things which he looks for within a CEO, within a leader: intelligence, intensity, and integrity. And he said, if you don't have the third, the first two are going to kill you. But amongst the first two is high levels of intelligence. There's no question about that. But then we recognise that you can be smart and make good decisions, but if you don't have the social and emotional skills to be able to engage people, you're not going to be able to get it executed. So the attention upon emotional intelligence started to become very important within leadership development. Social skills, the ability to be able to understand a network and be able to collaborate across borders, became aware. But the ability to be able to draw all of those strands together, your intuitions, your emotions, your social connections, to a point where you make very powerful and spontaneous decisions that everyone recognizes this is exactly right. That is intuitive intelligence. Now, how does this happen within a group? Is basically exactly the same way that it happens within a person's brain. And there have been some tremendously exciting developments in the field of neuroscience in the last 5 to 10 years, particularly in the last 3 years. The terminology, if you want to go Googling it, looking at this, is around intelligent memory, of how something we already kind of knew anyway, that every single piece of knowledge, every conversation, every piece of data that we see, we become exposed to, is actually stored within the brain. It's there. 99% of that stuff, we have no idea that we even knew that we even read that I ever had that. And the way in which neuroscientists who have studied with the latest technology, observing a person's brain when they make decisions, they see a movement within the brain which they didn't really recognize there before. They knew there was a left brain phenomena and a right brain phenomena, and they thought that choices and decisions were made probably more around the tension between those two. And what we know now is that whereas that's right, it's not just left and right, it's also up and down and it's front and back. And when a person comes to a point of understanding, this is it, this is absolutely, it's that aha moment, at that point in time, the whole brain is actually illuminated, not just the light, not just the left. So it's not just data and analysis and logic, and it's not just emotion and sense and feeling and creativity, it's all of that interacting together. Now, whereas you can describe with absolute repeatable empirical evidence that a person knows that they have made a decision some 10 seconds before it becomes conscious. There is things going on within the brain that scientists can recognize. A person has come to a conclusion up to 10 seconds in certain circumstances before they actually articulate it. In fact, before the neocortex, the more modern part of the brain, actually starts to interpret. Now, basically translating what happens inside the brain to the dynamics of a team, of a management team and a team meeting, that basically is what leadership development is. Those are the methodologies that we use to be able to ensure that a team collectively arrives at choices and decisions better than any one person can do themselves. Why? Because although there is vast reservoirs of knowledge within an individual's brain, when you've got 12 members of a management team, each with different perspectives and all of those reservoirs, and if you can tap that, that's massive. Greater than that, if you can then go down to the next levels of the organization and tap the collective intelligence, of 100, 200, 1,000 people focused upon arriving at a single point of conclusion, that's incredibly powerful. And in a leadership context, that means fierce resolve in execution. So how do you develop intuitive intelligence is basically around focus and formula. By focus, I mean where your attention goes, energy flows. Where energy flows, life grows. What you give attention to, you're going to bring to life. The relevance of this in a business sense is how do you concentrate your attention on the few things that make the biggest difference? Now, within that, there is a choice. How do you know this is the right place, this is the right product, this is the right market, this is the right person? And it's within this where you would want to develop your intuitive ability to be able to make good choices. So what you put your attention on to develop your intuitive intelligence, I'll give you 2 words that if you put attention upon this, already your brain will start to activate in a way which develops your intuitive intelligence. Presence and intention. And by presence, I mean the ability to get off the dance floor, stand on the balcony and see the whole picture, see what's really going on. Albert Einstein talked about his formula in 4 steps, the first of which was just exactly that. He said, most of the time in science we're solving problems that actually aren't the real problem. They might have been once, but in a dynamic environment things have moved on. So his first step was to see the big picture, see the whole picture, see a different perspective. Now when you do that as an individual, your brain starts illuminating and lighting up in a different way than if you're focusing. So get the whole brain active. Second step, discover the right question. That was in Einstein's formula. He said that if I had to solve a problem in 1 hour and my life depended upon the solution, I'd spend 55 minutes figuring out the right question. Once I've got the right question, I'll solve it in 5 minutes. Now, I'd need longer than that. I'm not Einstein. But the proportion is about right. So when you're seeing the big picture, understand what is the decisive point that we really need to understand, and then move into a collaborative process around that. Test your hypotheses with other people. What that does is not only then start developing your own sense of the whole, sense of context, you're tapping into others as well. Third step in Einstein's formula was then co-create visions of possibility. And this really was Einstein's genius, his ability to be able to collaborate, share information, and get other people to be willingly sharing what they know. So you're not only getting the advantages of the vast reservoirs of knowledge which is stored within your own intelligent memory, but that of others as well. And the fourth step in his formula was to then develop workable strategies. Basically, define your strategies and put it in a plan that works. Now, to make this simpler for a leader, we talk about presence and intention. Presence, developing presence of mind, the ability to be able to see the whole picture, and then getting absolutely clear upon your intention. And in this, when you practice those elements, you will then see not only the left side of the brain or the right side of the brain, but the top, the bottom, the whole thing start to work together to arrive at choices and decisions which are incredibly powerful, that lead to fierce resolve at the stage of execution. And ultimately, good decisions lead to fierce resolve, and that's what you need to be able to break through.